Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Geographic Society of Chicago's September Travelogue. I'm Judy Profit from the GSC office, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Just a reminder, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please post them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of the webinar, time permitting. If this is your first time attending a GSC event, welcome and thank you for tuning in. The Geographic Society of Chicago has educated the public about geography and its important uses since 1898. Today's GSC trains students in the latest geospatial technologies. Through services such as our geospatial technology programs, we offer unique educational experiences that harness the power of maps and the integrative tools of GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, to solve environmental and community issues. Together, our board and membership provide education opportunities for students and educators, assist in building geographic materials collections in educational and cultural institutions, promote new and emerging technologies and problem solving, and much, much more. Today's travelogue presenters are Rich Stein and Maria Diecidue. Rich and Maria, welcome and thank you for being with us today and presenting on what's so great about Amsterdam.
Thanks, Judy. Good afternoon, and thank you for showing up for our travelogue. My name is Maria Diecidue. Many of you may know my partner, Rich Stein. He's a GSC board member and has presented several travelogues before, including an Alaska road trip, Havasupai and the Grand Canyon, and the New Zealand South Island that he and I presented actually at the Cultural Center in the pre-COVID days.
Hi, good afternoon. One of the reasons we decided to go to Amsterdam was because our younger cousins told us how it was such a fun place to visit and how easy it is to travel from there to other parts of Europe. So it was a good starting point for our 2022 European journey.
But to be honest, we really didn't know much about Amsterdam and the Netherlands until we started our research for this travelogue. Amsterdam has a rich history as an early empire. Its citizens sheltered Anne Frank during World War II. Its progressive reputation regarding sex, drugs, and let's not forget rock and roll with John and Yoko's 1969 bed-in for peace. That's just some of what makes Amsterdam great. Okay, so here we have an aerial view of Amsterdam. Amsterdam is a marvel of engineering. The city was built by reclaiming land through the development of a canal system that began in the 13th century. This made Amsterdam a port city on the North Sea, an economic powerhouse that led to the Golden Age in 16th and 17th century. In this current aerial photo, Amsterdam's historic canal rings are clearly evident.
So 1/4 of the Netherlands lies below sea level. And over the centuries, the Dutch have devised an intricate network of measures to protect against inland flooding and coastal storms. In fact, their first water board was established as far back as 1255 to oversee levee development and maintenance. On this photo, the canal labeled Single was the outer perimeter of the original city, here to the right of the image. So rather than a linear accounting of our trip, we decided to include various topics of interest to us and that we hope will also interest you. So let's talk about the geographic setting. As you know, Amsterdam and the Netherlands are located in Northwest Europe. It's one of the Low Countries along with Belgium and Luxembourg, and its proximity to the North Sea with access to the Atlantic Ocean was advantageous to the development of trade within and beyond Europe, and also colonization in the West and East Indies. From 1588 to 1670s, Dutch trade, science, art, and colonization were among the most prominent in Europe. And during this golden age, Dutch merchants and settlers, many of them affiliated with the East and West India companies, established trading posts and colonies in the Americas, South Africa, and Asia, protected by a powerful navy.
Of course, the Dutch made their mark in the American colonies in New Amsterdam, also known as New York, the Bronx, a Dutch settlement in the Netherlands. And although Henry Hudson was an Englishman, in 1602, he was exploring on behalf of the Dutch West India Company when he discovered the Hudson River.
So here's a question: is it Holland or Netherlands? And the official name of the country is the Kingdom of the Netherlands, formed back in 1815. King Willem-Alexander is the current king of the nation. However, the name Holland is often used when all of the Netherlands is meant. Holland is actually two provinces, North Holland and South Holland, and Amsterdam is located in North Holland. It's the capital of the Netherlands and it's the largest city, about 1.2 million people.
But why are the people called Dutch?
Well, the word Dutch comes from a Germanic word meaning of the people. It shares a root with the German word Deutsch. The Germans called Germany Deutschland and the people there Deutsch. Dutch and German are related, both being Germanic languages, and the Netherlands for a time was called Nederdeutsch, meaning of the lower people.
Okay, so now we're looking at the Rhineland watershed. Not only outward to the New World, Amsterdam and the Netherlands took advantage of the rivers for inter-European commerce through an existing river network of the Lower Rhine. When the dam was built on the Amstel River, the city got its name. Amstel plus dam is Amsterdam.
Yeah, there's a historic, I found this historic map here. The point to make here is showing a canal that linked the Amstel River down to one of the distributaries of the Rhine River. And it's anytime you see a straight line in showing water, it's a pretty good indication that it was a man-made. And in this case, that canal increased the ability of Amsterdam to get upstream on the Rhine.
Okay.
Hence the name Amstel, which was the name of the old town, plus dam, gives us the current Amsterdam.
Okay. And when we think of the Netherlands, a little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike might come to mind. A huge disadvantage for the Dutch was the fact that most of the Netherlands and the Amsterdam are below sea level. This necessitated reclaiming the land to create arable land for crops to sustain life and commerce.
So these two arrows here are pointing at two different dikes. These are fairly current innovations. They were built back in the 1920s. The North Dike, up against what they call the Wadden Sea, which is part of the North Sea, is keeping the North Sea from intruding into the IJsselmeer, which was a former saltwater bay. This dike contributes to flood control and to the creation of new lands. All these bright green polygons are new land since most of this water has been pumped out of the IJsselmeer.
Another iconic image of the Netherlands is the windmill. Historically, the most essential function of windmills was to pump water out of the lowlands and then back into the canals behind the banks so that the land could be farmed.
Here's a modern day version of the pump station and replacing a lot of the windmills. So again, the farm fields would be lying lower than this pump station, and the Archimedes screw device inside the pump will bring the water and pump it out into the dike and the canal behind it.
Okay, so we're looking at the Canal District. This is the famous 17th century district around the inner city of Amsterdam. The whole district is designed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site for its unique cultural and historical value. The project for a new port city, built at the end of the 16th and the beginning of the 17th century, involved extending the city by draining the swampland using a system of canals in concentric arcs and filling the intermediate spaces. This urban expansion was the largest and most homogeneous of its time. It was a model for large-scale town planning and served as a reference throughout the world until the 19th century.
I found this map of the medieval city of Amsterdam back in 1544. It was a wood cut created by an artist, Cornelius Anthonius. It's showing the inner city and what we know as now the single canal. By the way, this map is oriented with north on the bottom side. So what I did was to reorient that UNESCO map we just saw to match the orientation of the older map. I also have put some circles up here. You can see this is the dam, the site of the dam on the Amstel River on each of those two maps. Okay, and I want to point out one thing we'll talk about in a minute. Up in the right corner, you can see the shield with 3 X's, so just keep that in mind for a second. Back on this map, this is the city before the construction of the semicircular ring of canals. So down here, it's on the north again. This is the I waterway. By the way, I is written IJ, and it's pronounced I. And on the
West.
west side, we see the single. So let's move on here. I'm going to make an enlargement of this inner portion. And by the way, I mentioned this was a woodcut. Look at the detail on this map, on this drawing, on this engraving. You see the old church here, the old city hall, and the dam site in the middle. We're going to talk about the dam rack. And the dam rack is a Dutch word meaning reach. And anyone knowing hydrologic terms, a reach refers to a particular section of a stream. And in this case, that section is from the dam downstream to the I waterway. So this shows the start of the dam rack right here by the dam.
Yeah, a fleet of, go back a second for
Sure.
Rich. Okay, so a fleet of 1,000 small barges carried goods from the big ships into the harbor, in the harbor to every corner of the city. And more than 1,000 warehouses on the canal side were supplied with these man-powered barges.
Here's another historic map. This is 120 years later, from 1662, and it shows the significant growth of Amsterdam in that time. Trade exploded in the 17th century, which is known as Amsterdam's Golden Age. In one very ambitious expansion project, 3 main canals, I've circled them here in red, were dug, and the houses around them were built. So this was completed around 1660, and it made the city grow 4 times its size and gave it the most intricate and efficient system of navigable waterways in the world. There is a maze of interconnecting canals that brought merchandise from all over the world to the doorstep of every canal side merchant. And again, on the bottom left corner, you see that symbol with the 3 X's.
Yeah, and this is a photo of the flag of Amsterdam, hence the 3 X's. It was taken at a farmer's market between the hotel that we were staying in and the metro station. It's the official flag of Amsterdam. The symbol with the St. Andrew's crosses dates back to 1505, when Amsterdam was a fishing town and all the ships registered in Amsterdam flew this flag. St. Andrew was a fisherman, and he was martyred on an X-shaped cross in the 1st century AD. The 3 crosses can be found on all kinds of buildings and in many logos. The crosses may represent the 3 fords or crossings in the Amstel River. In Chicago, we have a symbol of 3 branches of the Chicago River. As defined by the city code, it consists of a Y shape inscribed inside of a circle representing the branches of the Chicago River.
So it was a nice day, and we decided to take a stroll along the dam rack. And the dam rack is an avenue and also a partially filled in canal in the center of Amsterdam. It's the main street where people arriving at the station enter the city. It runs from Amsterdam Central Station, which you can see in the background here, in the north, and Dam Square in the south. So let's take a stroll
through Dam Square. And the first thing we come across is the Die Bijenkorf. It's the Beehive. It was founded in 1870, and it started as a small haberdashery shop on one of Amsterdam's oldest streets. Initially, it was limited to only yarns and ribbons, and employed a small staff of 4. The store expanded gradually, and by 1909, connecting shops were replaced with a new building. The Beehive is the most renowned chain of premium department stores in the Netherlands, and the chain is owned by the Selfridge Group. The Netherlands Trading Society was a Dutch trading and financial company established in 1824 to promote the development of trade, shipping, and agriculture. For the next 140 years, the NMH developed a large international branch network. Today, the building serves as a records archive. As we can see, it fills the entire block and has a variegated brick style. It was built in the 1920s. The Dutch Wall Street. Okay, so because the former stock exchange building, the monumental Bourse de Boulogne from 1903, and several other buildings related to financial activities were erected in the early 20th century on the Dam Rack, it became synonymous with the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, much the same as Wall Street is synonymous with the New York Stock Exchange. The Bourse de Boulogne now serves as a concert and exhibit hall. Today, the area is known for its restaurants, bars, and tourist shops. In 2019, they had a temporary exhibit of the Charging Bull. It's from the same designer that did the New York Stock Exchange Charging Bull. His name is Arturo Di Modica. So, Rich, why do the Dutch wear wooden shoes or clogs?
Well, wooden shoes wearers claim that the shoes are warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and provide support for good posture. The wood also absorbs perspiration so the foot can breathe.
Yeah, clogs. They continue to be worn well into the 20th century. And I had a pair in the 1970s. They were pink patent leather clogs that I loved. I wore them out, so I replaced them with these.
So here's Amsterdam Central Station, and no, that's not a typo in the title. There are 2 A's in the Dutch spelling of Central. It was built back in 1889 on an artificial island in the front of the city, front meaning the I waterway. Designed by Pierre Kuipers, who is also known for his design of the Rijksmuseum. Trains to the airport and connections to European cities, as well as trams, the metro, buses, and ferry service originate from Central Station. So we got off the airport train and walked out to the plaza in front here, and I turned around and took this photo, and I said, wow, that's pretty nice. Look at those 2 clock towers. And then I took a closer look and really, well, no, there's not 2 clock towers. The one on the left is really a wind vane. And so you can see that with a fairly gusty wind from all directions. This was important. The wind direction was important when we had, back in the 1880s, when there were still sailing ships. And the captains of those ships needed to know what direction the wind was blowing so they could get their ship out of the water or out to the ocean. Here's Dam Square. Dam Square was created back in the 13th century. That's when the dam was first built across the Amstel River. And that was to prevent the Zuiderzee, the South Sea, from flooding the city. And it also formed the first connection between the settlements on each side of the river. Dam Square is a triumphal checkpoint for visitors to Amsterdam, and it's an ideal first stop for local attractions like the National Monument we see here in the center, the Royal Palace from which this photograph was taken. There's a 15th century new church and the Beehive that we just talked about. It's been the site of many important historical events, such as the coronation of King Willem in 2013, and there's an annual New Year's Eve celebration. Here's the national monument. Germany invaded the Netherlands on May 10, 1940, bringing the formerly neutral country into the war and occupying it thereafter. It would not be fully liberated until May of 45. So by the end of the Second World War, the Netherlands had one of the highest casualty rates of all German occupied countries, with over 205,000 people having died. So this national monument, created in 1956, commemorates those casualties as well as the Dutch resistance during the occupation. There's a national remembrance of the dead held at the monument every year on May 4 to commemorate the casualties of the war and subsequent armed conflicts.
As a tolerant society with a diverse population, public opinion is freely expressed on contemporary issues here in Dam Square. We see a protest of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and we also came upon Iranian and Palestinian protesters voicing their opposition to their oppressive governments.
I thought we hit that one. Okay,
Yeah.
this was a video showing those protests we came across, and there's also a nice little video of
That's a panoramic view.
Panoramic view. That's what
Yeah.
we're doing. So you can see some of the beehive there. Sorry for the video breaking up. Oh, look, there's a friendly tourist. Hello. And
Madame Tussaud. Every city's got one.
okay, that's enough of that. So let's get to the most noticeable feature of Amsterdam, which are its canals. Start off with a few facts. There's 165 canals within the city. The oldest one constructed way back in 1385, and there's extra points for you if you can pronounce the name of that canal. It covers about 62 miles, 1,280 bridges, the average depth 8 feet, and the water is not potable. It's a mix of salt water and fresh water, so you wouldn't want to be drinking that.
But is it swimmable?
Well, sort of. Every year there is an annual 2-kilometer swim held in the canal to benefit ALS research.
And in case you're wondering, while some 400 people might fall into the canals, only about 18 drownings are reported annually. Thank God. Or not, I don't know. We took a couple of canal boat tours to get a feel for the city from the water perspective. As mentioned, the Canal District is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The design of the city shows off its 17th century architecture. The Dutch buildings lining the canals have a style that is distinguished by gabled roofs, some triangular, some bell-shaped. The houses are built on wooden pilings driven into the sandy soil. And from time to time, we came across a slanted building. They look precarious, but these 17th century buildings are lovingly preserved from bottom to top. And so while the residential while today they are residential townhouses, many of these buildings served as both warehouses and homes in the 17th century. Goods were brought in through the canals on low barges that could glide under the bridges. Most homes in the Canal District have narrow, winding staircases that make it difficult to bring large, bulky items up the stairs. At the tops of these buildings, you'll see hooks. They're decorative, but they also serve a purpose. They were used to haul trade commodities to the upper floors. The second floor might have been residential, and the first floor, that's where retail shops or wholesale trading was conducted. What better way to get oriented to the city than to take a tour through the neighborhoods as you might do on a Chicago architectural cruise.
And by the way, this map on the right, I use my phone. I used an app on my phone called Map My Ride to get to capture the route of the canal boat. So here's a couple. In fact, on the upper right, that's our boat and a view from the inside. And here's the a view of the city. And as I think it was Freud said, sometimes a canal boat is just a canal boat.
And as you can see, the height of the ship might be must have to be low enough to pass through those bridges. Okay, so we're going on a houseboat tour. There are 2,500 houseboats flanking the Amsterdam canals, and along the canals we see houseboats that added living space for Amsterdammers. These small vessels were once cargo barges and became obsolete in the 1930s, and today they've been rehabbed for living. In the old days, when the canals were still used for transport of merchandise, living on a houseboat was a sign of poverty in Amsterdam. But as the transportation function dwindled in the last century, the old industrial canals became upmarket residential areas. The old warehouses on the canal sides were converted into deluxe apartment complexes. The barges became a new life. It began a new life as a comfortable houseboat with ample living space in their formal cargo holds. Some are quite old. The oldest one was built in 1840 as a water boat for fresh drinking water. Many have been afloat for more than a century.
Okay, let's end that there. And here's a few more still shots of some of these canal boats. And there's also a variety of pleasure craft that you find on the canals, including paddle boats on the top and, of course, kayaks. Now, on our canal tour, you may get the impression here that a lot of these canals vary in size, and there are a lot of right angle turns, just like on the street. And sometimes, just like on a street, a large truck might have to make a 3-point turn to negotiate an intersection. Same thing on these canal boats. So I'm going to show you some features of the canals while this boat negotiates that turn. And what I want to point out are the canal gates. And we'll come back to that in a second here. We'll turn there. They are these huge wooden canal gates that are installed typically at intersections of the canal. They are necessary for water management because it's still an important function to control the flow of water for repairs and for general cleaning. 3 times a week, 14 of these gates around the city close up so clean water can be pumped from the big lake IJsselmeer, and the current that is produced then pushes all that dirty canal water through the open locks and out onto the other side of the city, where there are a variety of boats that can clean up the water. They can suck up that garbage, pick up the garbage. So as a result of this cleaner water, about 20 different species of fish and crabs have returned to live in the canals, and that in turn attracts a variety of birds like herons and ducks and gulls.
Okay, so here we are at the lockmaster's house. Could you pronounce that for me, Rich?
Sluisvak.
The Sluisvak. Okay, so part of the charm of this drinking hole is that it's when you go into this pub, you have to embrace its quirks. It's everything is from the stone floor to the staircases to the wooden beams in the ceiling tilt to one side, so it makes you feel like you've already had a drink before you even taken your first sip. It was built in 1695.
So one evening we were out for a stroll and we came across this site, and I'm looking at all these pipes spanning the canal. I'm thinking, no, those can't be water pipes. They don't look like, and in fact they're not. What they are just bracing that have been wedged in there to prevent the sides of the canal from collapsing. Remember, these go back hundreds of years, and so they need a little attention. And what they do to repair these are to put huge pieces of sheet piling, pound them into the canal, and that will reinforce the canal bank. Also, part of the maintenance is to dredge the canals, not just to get excess sediment out of there, but also whatever trash and other items might have been thrown in there, such as bicycles. I was amazed to find out that there are over 10,000 bikes a year that are fished out of the canals.
Mhm. Also, when someone forgets to put the parking brake on, their vehicle might land in the drink.
We did a second canal cruise, cruise number 2, Into the Eye. And again, here's the map showing straight shot out to this is called the Eye Waterway.
And awaiting for the ferry for the at Central Station, we're looking north into the North neighborhood and the Eye Museum that we'll talk about later. Okay, so the Eye Waterway, on that ferry crossing, we see the Nemo Science Museum. It's a modern building that looks like the hull of a ship, and it was designed by Renzo Piano, who designed the modern wing of the Art Institute here in Chicago. It's built over the Eye Tunnel. The replica of the Amsterdam, which ran aground in the 1749 in the English Channel, is moored by the National Museum. Back on land, we continued our walking tour and came upon a sidewalk cafe. There's hundreds of them in the city. In addition to Dutch cuisine, the Amsterdam is home of a variety of international flavors due to its long history of migration. And speaking of Dutch cuisine, at the south end of the Broken, we stumbled upon an Amsterdam's take of the Horn and Hardart automats that we know that were famous in New York City and Philadelphia. The FEBO was named after the Ferdinand Bolstraat, and by 1960, it had grown into an automat restaurant where homemade croquettes and Frankendalen were sold. We didn't have any, by the way, but anyway.
Okay, nearby from that previous slide with the open cafe is the Rembrandtplein, and just a small park with a statue of Rembrandt that was created back around 1876. By the early 20th century, this square developed into a center for nightlife, drawing artists and young people, and it continues to be popular with residents and tourists. And right down the block is the oldest church, the biggest church in Amsterdam, built back in 1619. It's the Westerkerk, meaning Western Church. It's the most important Protestant church in the city, and its bell tower, the Westerkerk Tower, dominates above most of the old city center and is regarded by many as the city symbol, much as the water tower is a symbol of the city here in Chicago. And I want to point out again, you can see on the very top there, those 3 X's on the city emblem there.
The Westerkerk is located on the Prince Canal near the Anne Frank House. And now we're standing on the opposite side, and we're looking across at we're looking across at the Anne Frank House. It's at 263 Prince Canal, or Prinsengracht. It's where Anne lived in hiding with her family for more than 2 years during World War II. Now it's converted into a museum, and it contains a sobering exhibition about the persecution of the Jews during the war, as well as discrimination in general. Tickets must be reserved in advance, so be sure to start looking for your reservations about a month before you try your desired visit. Okay, so by the evening, we came upon a statue of Baruch Spinoza. He was a philosopher of Portuguese Jewish origin, born in Amsterdam. One of the foremost and seminal thinkers of the Enlightenment, Spinoza became to be considered a leading philosophical figure of the Dutch Golden Age. The other monument is the Jewish Resistance Monument, memorializing the resistance by Jewish citizens killed between 1940 and 1945. The Amstel River is in the background.
So we were, we spent the 4.5 days there, not just on the canal, but it was mostly walking through the city. And it's such a gorgeous city. And every time you turn around, there's some amazing charming, yes, front door of a building or of a house or different streetscapes. And so I'm just gonna take you on a little tour here and show you some of the street scenes, like this new bridge. And then again, we can see the some of the hoists protruding from the upper stories of these buildings. Here's a better one. They're all in silhouette down here. This late afternoon shot of some narrow street.
Coffee
That
shop.
led us, yes, that led us to
Coffee shop. If you want to get coffee, that's not the place to go anyway. Well, maybe there's some coffee in there. And okay, so although cannabis is not legal in the Netherlands, there is a tolerance policy, which means the law is not enforced in relation to the retail sale of small quantities for personal use in the cannabis cafes known as coffee shops. The municipality of Amsterdam has implemented a local coffee shop policy to limit public nuisance, keep a small sector transparent and manageable, prevent criminal involvement in the sector, and discourage cannabis use by young people.
And just around the corner from that one shop is this kind of park, like you called it an alley. I was intrigued by the signs here, and so the one says, "Yeah, this is certainly welcome to imbibe on your drug of choice, and of course, watch out for your dog."
Okay. More importantly, let's get around. How did we get around this town? Okay, so we took the train from Schiphol Airport to Amsterdam Central Station, and we bought our Amsterdam City cards on arrival at the Central Station. This is a multi-day pass that can be used on buses, trains, rail. It offers discounts for free entry into some museums and attractions. So it's definitely a good value. There's a funny story. When we first arrived, after our 8-hour flight and our 2-hour wait for baggage and a quick train ride from the airport to Central Station, I insisted that we cab it to the hotel. And when we gave the driver the address of the hotel, he said, "You know, you can walk there quicker." That's because the cars must navigate a circuitous path around the canals that takes longer than it might take to walk. But I was too tired and jet lagged to walk with luggage at this time.
So here's the metro. This is the transportation system run by what's known as the GVB. And again, there's more points if you can pronounce the name of that organization. The first plans for an underground railway in Amsterdam date back to the 1920s. However, it wasn't until the 50s that serious efforts began due to the post-war increase in population and also the increase in automobile traffic. So the Amsterdam Metro Network began operation in 1977 with the first line. They have continued to develop the system, and the newest line is the M52, the blue line here, north to south, which is tunneled under the I waterway, and is the first to link up the northern side of the city. It's a yeah, okay, so here's
the train
road,
plan, the
yeah.
train plan. So there's the M52. Doesn't Rich look very excited to see that?
Yeah, I am excited, and it's not just for the train, but once we got on the train, on the right here, look at the photo. You can see from the end of one car all the way down through the end of the first car, and it's called an open gangway, and it just makes for a whole lot more efficient movement of passengers throughout the train, so no one's clustered around all the doors.
Mm-hmm. And isn't this a charming way to reserve a seat for a disabled, elderly, or pregnant person?
So wait, what category are we in?
I don't know. I don't think I was pregnant though. Okay.
So here, this is the entrance to the Rokin station on that new blue line, north-south line. And I was struck by the juxtaposition of the chrome and the steel and shiny glass here on the entrance of the station against the 18th and 19th century buildings on the street. Now, there was a lot of community opposition to the location of this new line. And part of that was, since it was going to be excavated through a filled-in canal, there was a lot of concern that the excavation would create vibration or something that would impact the buildings, given that they were built on these shaky wooden pilings from centuries ago. As it turned out, that was not a problem. But during the excavation, literally hundreds of thousands of artifacts were revealed, and they are displayed between the escalators. Here's the escalators going from the mezzanine down to the station platform. And here's a close-up of some of them. I think I see my old flip phone in there, but yeah, so here's a link to this below the surface Amsterdam. They have cataloged seriously 700,000 objects spanning 800 years that have been discovered in this excavation. So surface transportation, we had trams way back in the last quarter of the 19th century. You can see the horse-drawn trams here in Dam Square. That's the Royal Palace right there with the old church. By the 1920s, electrification was introduced, and they were able to extend their routes throughout the city. Here's a modern day version. This is just down the block from our hotel, but it's sleek, clean, quiet, very efficient way to get around. And just like Chicago has historic L cars that they run every once in a while, Amsterdam has a similar occasion when they'll drag out their old running stock and such as we see here.
Okay, well, bicycles. One of the first things you notice when you arrive in Amsterdam is the multitude of bicycles. They're everywhere. They're everywhere, and everybody's riding them. From its inception in the 19th century, the bicycle has been popular in the Netherlands and the Amsterdam region. Around 1960, the bicycle was seriously hampered by the growth of car traffic. But thanks to a combination of activism and municipal policy, the bicycle made an impressive comeback in the 1970s. Thanks to the bicycle, the city has become safe, accessible, and livable. They take their bicycling very seriously. Bicycling is a meaningful means of transportation in the city. You'll see people of all ages and stripes riding their bikes, often without helmets, mostly without helmets, from children on the way to school to people in business attire on their way to work. It's a great form of exercise and environmentally friendly. It's a practical way to get around this compact city with canals and narrow bridges. But pedestrians beware. When the traffic light changes, a herd of riders advances into the bike lane at full speed. They have the right of way, and here they are. We did witness at least one pedestrian getting knocked to the ground. Thankfully, she got right up and out of the bike lane before another hit her. They're unrelenting, those bike riders.
Yeah, they take no prisoners when they're riding. So again, through our travels, through our walks around the city, bikes are everywhere, and an amazing variety of bikes. So I just let's go through a few of them. Here's a kid hauling bike here. cargo bikes were everywhere, all kinds of varieties. Fancy bikes, I have no idea what the reason for these were. They look nice. Here's an all-wood bike.
Wasn't that Barbie's bike, the pink one?
Well,
Okay, yeah.
a little ahead of his time then, but yeah, I think so. An all-wood bike, except for the seat and tires, and bicycles for two. And I think these two guys are off to tour the museums.
Yeah, just outside the Canal District, we traveled, but not very far, to the Rijksmuseum. The museum was built in 1885 in Gothic and Renaissance style. The Dutch masters, the famous painters, not the cigars, are displayed in this quintessentially Dutch museum.
Right?
Well,
No.
yeah. The Rembrandt, no.
Here's the
Rijksmuseum.
Rijksmuseum.
Yeah, there's a Rijksmuseum. It was in the front. You'll see an Amsterdam sign, which was a promotional advertising that we saw on the transit cards and elsewhere.
And you can see the similarity here in architecture style between this and Central Station. Again, it was the same architect designing that.
Okay.
Now, there was some controversy in past years about whether the road through the Rijksmuseum should be open to cars and or bikes, or limited to just pedestrians and bikes, and that scenario won out. So there are no vehicles coming through here, which is a good thing, because given this the design, these arches on the ceiling, it tends to make it very acoustically accommodating to artists, street performers like this.
Okay, so if you only have time to go to one museum, the Rijksmuseum is an absolute must, because it's where the paintings from the Dutch masters, Hals, Rembrandt, Stein, Vermeer, and others is. Here we have a picture of The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Vermeer from 1665, The Merry Drinker by Hals, 1628, and The Feast of St. Nicholas by Stein, 1665. These paintings from the Golden Age depict scenes of everyday people and everyday life, rather than the royalty or religious subjects as we mostly see from other cultures of this time. This secular attitude is very Dutch. Oh, the Night Watch. I was struck by the sheer size of this painting. It's 12 feet by 14 feet, and each of the characters are nearly life-size. Their faces are well lit, and each of these militiamen paid for their part in this painting. It was a commission by the Amsterdam Civic Guard. However, there's no bloodshed in this dramatic representation of a militia group. These were actually not warriors, after all. They were merchants, and by their dress and comportment, we can see a pride and confidence of a growing capitalist class. The Dutch masters made famous by the cigar brand are from a Rembrandt painting, The Wardens of the Amsterdam Drapers Guild, known as the Syndics. It's from 1662. They commissioned the painting to be hung in the Drapers Guild Hall. These were the markers of quality for the textile industries. I guess the Imperial cigar brand took liberties in adopting these overseers of quality to promote their cigars. Branding on the cigar boxes began in the 1950s. The syndics were civil magistrates or government functionaries. Rich and I are both cinephiles, so the trip to the Eye Museum was in order. The I Film Museum was designed by DeLugan Meisel Associate Architects. The museum has 4 cinemas of different sizes and exhibit halls. Interestingly, we walked through a film that was presented as a narrative across a series of rooms. But the best part of this museum is an exhibit hall at the lower level with clips of films from every genre: comedy, drama, gangster, monsters, sci-fi, through all of time, since the early days of cinema through today. And we couldn't resist the hash, marijuana, and hemp museum. Besides, it's located in the red light district. So now that marijuana, though, is legal in so much of the United States, it might have lost some of its allure. But it was fun. And can you guess which one of these guys inhaled? Yeah, it was educational too. So if you want to know about the evolution of its legality, the medical or recreational uses of marijuana, it's worth a stop at the Hemp and Marijuana Museum. Okay, walking through the red light district, you'll pass by the sex workers boldly showing off their offerings in a storefront window. Seeing these sex workers advertising their goods, that was shocking to me. So let's change the subject to something that doesn't require parental guidance.
Yeah, but first, I don't think it was shocking to that guy.
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
So we came upon the Tulip Museum by accident. It's not much more than a 3-story storefront, very unassuming building, but loaded with the history of what is a very lucrative commodity for the Dutch. So it turned out to be a worthwhile visit. During the Golden Age, tulips were a symbol and an economic commodity. Tulip mania was a period when contract prices for the bulbs of the very fashionable tulip reached an extraordinary levels, and the major acceleration started in 1634 and then dramatically collapsed in February of 1637. It's generally considered to have been the first recorded speculative bubble or asset bubble in history. In more recent times, 1944, tulips became food for the Dutch to stave off famine during World War II. There are many tulip-themed gifts available in the Tulip Museum, but you can't bring tulip bulbs home to the States. We bought some for our French friends. In the picture on this, you'll see those purple allium. Those we bought from a local outfit here and planted them right after our trip.
So you got it.
So we began our presentation by posing the question, what's so great about Amsterdam? It turns out that what made Amsterdam a great city in the early days, its geographic location, the engineering marvel of its canals, its tolerance for others and appreciation for the arts and science, are the same qualities that make Amsterdam great today.
And add to that an enthusiastic environmental spirit supported by the bikes and modern transport, the continued freedom of expression, the ease of getting around with welcoming people who speak English. Amsterdam today, like Chicago, is one of the greatest cities in the world. And now that we know so much more about it, we can't wait to return to Amsterdam.
Thank you for sticking with us through this Amsterdam travelogue that took over 400 years in the making.
Okay. All right.
Good afternoon. And if you have any questions, please, I think that Judy's going to help us navigate those questions.
Thank you again for presenting, Rich and Maria. It doesn't look like at this time we have any questions. So thank you to everyone who attended today's travelogue. And please mark your calendars for these exciting upcoming GSC events. So tonight, join the GSC for a fun night of geography trivia at Leader Bar at 7 p.m. Bring your crew up to 6 people per team and test your knowledge against local geo enthusiasts. There's no registration needed and walk-ins are welcome. And here is the address at the bottom of the screen. I'll give you a second to write that down. It's Leader Bar on Irving Park Road. And that'll be tonight, starts at 7 p.m. Next, this Saturday, September 23rd, GSC will be holding its 2023 Biodiversity Fest at Big Marsh from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. Join us, Chicago Park District, the Wetlands Initiative, and many other community science organizations for a day of fun and nature exploration at one of Chicago's largest outdoor spaces. Big Marsh Park features walking, running, biking trails that attract outdoor recreation enthusiasts of all skill levels. It is also home to a wide variety of wildlife, including amphibians, reptiles, insects, mammals, and birds. And then you can use that QR code to scan and register. Alrighty. Next Wednesday, September 27th at 7 p.m., join us for our third installment of the Women in Geography webinar series with Linda C. Samuels as she talks us through her most recent book, Infrastructural Optimism, based broadly on the concept that everyone deserves to believe in a better future for themselves, our society, and the planet, and that the design and production of infrastructure, our largest public space, should be contributing to that better future rather than detracting from it. Lastly, to get more information and stay in the loop on future travelogues and all GSC happenings and events, subscribe to our email newsletter using the QR code on the screen. For all these events and registration for these events can be found on the GSC website under events. Thank you so much for tuning in and have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much to Rich and Maria, and we look forward to seeing you guys again, hopefully soon.